I think it's illegal to buy anything other than a garage pie if you're buying from a convenience store between 1 and 3 a.m. I'm not sure if Cyril maybe changed that during lockdown, but I'm pretty sure that was a rule.
Yeah, we're also not sure what Cyril did in lockdown. But we can also say that it's interesting that you mentioned the pie, because we tried like a local pie, and we tried to sort of almost not revolutionize the garage pie, but we wanted to make it a little bit more artisanal. No, my friend, there's certain things you must not mess with.
It's a garage pie.
We're back at the sparrow pie.
Today on the podcast, I was lucky enough to have two titans of the food and hospitality industry, Gary Kyriacou and David Higgs, co-founders of the Marble Group, who have brought us industry-leading restaurants such as Marble and Saint. Now, whilst the majority of the country went into muted business during lockdown, they actually expanded the Marble Group, and today we speak about their latest entry, Pantry, which is a revolutionary take on the garage forecourt concept. Now, Pantry's only been open for 2 months, and in that time it has become an overwhelming success. So we asked David and Gary, where did the idea for Pantry come from? What have they learned through this process? And why would two titans of industry make such a huge change to move away from restaurants to petrol stations? Well, find it here on this podcast. And as you'd expect, David and Gary are full of wisdom and sage advice. Don't miss a minute. My name is Kieran Naidu, and this is the Self-Starters Podcast, a place where we learn how to take our ideas and turn them into successful action. And if you're listening, you have no excuse not to get started on your idea right this moment, unless you just want to finish this episode first.
Gary, David, welcome to the Self-Starters Podcast. It is honestly such an honor to have you with me today. Both of you are titans of the food and hospitality industry. And in this podcast, we learn how to turn our ideas into successful action. And that's exactly what the two of you have done time and time again, both in your individual capacities and as a partnership with the Marble Group. From Marble, Saint, and Zoo, you guys really are revolutionizing the restaurant space in the country. And you're doing it again with your latest idea that you've turned into successful action, which is Pantry, which is a revolutionary take on the garage forecourt experience and what convenience actually means. And let's jump straight into the questions. Gary, I'd love to understand, how did this idea for Pantry come about?
Well, I've got some retail experience background. I sold all my retail shops years ago, 20 years ago. And through COVID, we had the opportunity to revamp the garage downstairs and put a convenience shop in. So we try to reimagine what people want. It's convenience. It's homely. It's put a bit of hospitality back into retail. Where people come and feel welcome. And then we just started this journey, and we just worked around what we wanted to see in a convenience shop, and with David's experience as well in the food and the ready meals. We just came up with a concept, and we just put a few nostalgic things in the shop that people would appreciate, and it just evolved into what it is right now.
I find it a really, really fun concept. I've been there a couple of times. Can I just say the sirloin Prego rolls are to die for. I've had it about 4 or 5 times already. It's quite a deviation from what you guys have done previously in the restaurant space. To go, if I was a betting man, I wouldn't have thought the next thing up on the Marble Group's roster would have been into the garage forecourt space. A question about that: being as successful as you guys are, is there a bit of nervousness when you transition into something somewhat different? And Gary, I know you said you have experience in the space, but many years back. As people who are quite successful, do you feel a sense of nervousness given that people will be watching whatever you do next?
And I just want to interject here. So Gary is quite, he says he has some experience. Gary opened the very first super spas in the country, the very first, and he had about 4 of them. So he has lots of experience. just want to say that, and I think one of the reasons for opening it, and people might find it strange, but I think for us it was the next logical step. It was the obvious thing to do. We found ourselves very exposed during lockdown in the restaurant space, and during lockdown we came up with probably 4 or 5 different concepts of what we could do if this happened again, or if this COVID thing doesn't go away very quickly. How do we restructure our business? And that's sort of how it came about. And I think if you look at the online space and online shopping, and whether it's the Woolies or the Checkers app that's doing so well, it's very important to first have a really good base before we go into that sort of online space, so that people can actually come into the shop, understand what it is that they're buying, and then go into online. So yeah, it's been a very interesting, for me, it's been incredibly interesting. It's my first time in that retail space, and a hell of a learning curve for sure.
And it is fun doing it. You learn something every day in that space, because there's so many suppliers, your customers, you got your ready to go, your food, your deli, your coffee. So it's everything in one.
So we counted last week how many suppliers we got. We're touching on 250 individual suppliers. Now, the incredible thing about that is, yes, we're bringing in some interesting international stuff, but the majority of those suppliers are local suppliers. So local, supporting the local guys around us, and whether it be honey from farmers in the Karoo or cheese from farmers in the Karoo, to Mama Bongi, who's making biscuits. It really touches on all our local suppliers, and then using our own expertise as chefs, incredible pastries, incredible breads, our deli section, the prego rolls, the pizzas. It's endless, really, as long as it's a quality product. And I think one of the most important, again, Gary touched on this, one of the most important things that we wanted to do was to bring the hospitality feel back into the grocer. It's very much like the old hotel GMs. They knew everybody. They and it's no different in the corner cafe. Where the owner knew everybody, spoke to everybody, and that's what we try and get through. We've got restaurant managers in there running the floor. They understand people. They understand food. I've got proper chefs in the kitchen. Again, so yeah, a very, very exciting space for us to be in. Yeah.
No, and I mean, having such a hybrid model, I mean, I'm not surprised to hear that you have over 200 individual suppliers that you're dealing with. That's an absolute behemoth. Talk to me about some of the challenges you guys would have experienced as you went from idea to bringing this into fruition in March this year.
You asked a question earlier on if we were nervous, and how do you, you're always nervous when you're opening a new business. You're always second guessing yourself. If you're not feeling, if you don't have those feelings of doubting yourself, then there's something wrong. You know what I mean? But you have to push through that and create what you want to do. It's like, until the day we were open, we were like, should we open? We hadn't had the retail license for the forecourt for petrol sales, and we opened the first 2 months.
2 months, yeah.
2 months without selling 1 liter of petrol. So we opened the convenience shop before the petrol started, which we thought was a big risk, but it actually worked out better.
Yeah, I think the other challenge that we got was was how quickly this thing took off, and then all of a sudden, there wasn't stuff on the shelf the next day. So, it was restructuring of the staffing. How do we get everything in place so that it's a 24-hour shop? I think that's also quite unique for what we're doing, and we sell all our product, other than obviously alcohol, 24 hours. So how do you gear yourself up to that? So we had to rethink this thing very, very quickly. And I think that's the incredible thing about all our businesses, whether it be Marble, Saint, or Zoo. Especially with Marble, it was a massive learning curve for all of us. And Gary's first foray into the hospitality sector, from a restaurant point of view, was to, it really is adapt or die, and it's not like a fucking month-to-month thing. It's a day-to-day thing. It's an hour-to-hour thing. And we have an incredible team headed up by Mornay downstairs in the pantry that sort of understand how we work, and when we fix things straight away. And when our staff understand that, when our team understands that, then the whole thing can move ahead quite quickly. Yeah.
I think, Gary, I read somewhere you were telling the story of the opening day of Marble, and David was still busy screwing chair legs on that day. And I think, David, you said you were suffering from PTSD for months after that. As you guys have built more and more businesses, it sounds that you've got into a groove and you're really adept at handling those challenges. So maybe let's also then talk about, since opening in March, what have you enjoyed the most about Pantry and how things have been going?
Well, for me, I've enjoyed seeing how the response is with customers, seeing the excitement, them walking in and seeing something different, and it's satisfaction, as a businessman and a business owner, to see that you've achieved something for customers and they really appreciate it. And for me, is the biggest thing.
I think for me, like, where do you put something on a shelf? Merchandising.
Yeah.
Like, it's a big word for me. Merchandising, and it's so, like, I find it incredibly interesting. The challenge of we moved the hot chocolates this week because it's getting cold. Like how it's going to sell. And looking at the figures this week to next week, and I think that's great that you get excited about something like that. Because and again, as Gary said, if there isn't that excitement, or if there isn't that little bit of anxiety, you get overconfident or you get a little bit arrogant about the way you do things. And still with our businesses today, like when you go into service, when you walk into the restaurant, there has to be that little bit of a tweak in your stomach that says, okay, today's a new day, and what is today going to bring, and how are we going to handle it? And so yeah, for me, the response to, obviously, to the Pantry has been overwhelming. But I think the learning curve of and today again we've tweaked a little, one or two things, and we were just discussing labels, and like we get excited about labels.
We're doing something every day in the Pantry. We're curating it, new product, just getting the Pantry as a product better and better every day. We never sit back and say, it's a work in progress.
And I can see that drive for constant innovation. I mean, not only do you have such a, I guess, diverse hybrid store with Pantry, but you guys are also creating an app that I believe that will be coming out soon. What is the purpose of the Pantry app, and how is that going to transform your customers' engagement with the business?
Well, so that is going to be very informative. A nice user experience, and deliveries like online, whatever you can get at the Pantry. Basically, we're going to start off with a certain amount of product that will be on the app, and you can get anything: pastries ordered the day before, breads, ready to go meals, your basic grocery items, all delivered.
I think it's interesting. We wanted to get the online app going a lot quicker and so forth, but I think we've also realized that people also miss going, and this is I think this is quite an important point, actually. So people miss going to the store, browsing through the shelves, having a look what's new, experimenting a little bit, I suppose you can call it, but also a massive sense of sort of almost community. So, obviously we're a central point in the parks, which is, we're very lucky. But all of a sudden, like neighbors are sort of getting together, and not only are they shopping, they have a quick cup of coffee. Now they're buying a pizza, they sit down together, they have a bit of a catch up. So with, and this almost happened accidentally. It wasn't something that we purposely sort of set out to do. The chairs and tables were, Irene sort of pushed us to do it, and we were saying, that's parking and this, that, and the other. But it's the way it's come together is very special, and again, it just shows through all our businesses, I think, where people feel comfortable in our spaces, and our spaces are all experiential, which is very, very important nowadays. So just to answer the question again from that online app thing, yes, we need to be able to get the product to the customer, but it's lovely that the customer can come to the shop and experience it, but then he can also do it from home as well. When he knows the shop, he has a better experience.
It's and I'm not just saying this because I'm chatting to you, but there definitely is a vibe when you walk. There's a bit of a buzz. There are people sitting wherever, and the store, again, because it's a hybrid. It can wear many different hats for many different people. I mean, I've used it exclusively to buy food, grab and go meals, and it's been really, really great. But I mean, I think I walked past one of the aisles, and as you're mentioning, where do you put your products? I think I walked past, was it Lego? And I was like, oh, that's very interesting and very cool. I could imagine, you need to go to a friend's birthday party for their kid. You forgot to get a gift. Just grab the Lego and take it with. So, it really is convenience, and there's such a wide selection. So one of the things I'd love to ask you about the concept of Pantry, and what we found on the podcast is generally we have people who are starting out on their ideas. And I always ask them about the level of due diligence they go into before starting on their idea. And it's quite varied. A lot of people just trust their intuition. They don't necessarily think deeper than that, and they move into their idea. Other people sit on the far end of the spectrum and think about this maybe a bit too much. They have analysis paralysis, and it takes them years before they actually start into their idea. I'd love to hear from the two of you, two exceptionally successful businessmen. Where do you guys sit on that spectrum, and especially in relation to Pantry? What was your process from a due diligence perspective?
We've never done a due diligence, opening anything. I think it's more intuition. I think David and myself, years of being in business and understanding the business, you create a little formula in your head, and you go with your gut. I've always done that, and you know what? It works out. I don't know why, but for me, it's always been on the gut feeling, doing something.
I think the only thing for us, I would say, would always be our site, where we, like, the type of business is one thing, like, we know what we want to do, but where you position it. So we were incredibly lucky with Marble because of the area that we're in, and then obviously with Saint and Zoo, and so with a petrol station, for instance, or the service station with Pantry and the convenience store. If you look at where it's situated, obviously slap bang in the middle on a major artery in the parks, all the parks, surrounded by all the parks. So that's obviously a bit of a given. And then on the left-hand side, coming from Sandton, if you come down Sandton Drive, if you come down Bompas, if you come down Jellicoe, all from Oxford, the first petrol station that you get to, or the first stop that you get to, is the Pantry. So although we do always go with gut 100%. I'm not a great analyst in any way. Our sites we've always been very particular about where we position these.
There's definitely a careful curation, which is it's a due diligence without calling it a due diligence. There's a deep thought behind it. It's not just I like the idea, let's just run with it wherever we can. I think that's a very important lesson for the listeners. I'd love to know, Pantry has been an exceptional hit in its first few months since opening. What's your future vision for it? 5 years out, what are the hopes and dreams?
Well, we're still curating Pantry. We're still pushing and pulling products, how to do things, what's selling, what's not selling, what customers want. And I think in the next couple of months we want to launch the app first, and then most probably expand the concept around Gauteng first, and then maybe nationally soon, within 5 years. But definitely there's an expansion plan, because we've seen the business model works and what people want.
I think one of the difficult things with Marble, Saint, and Zoo, or any restaurant, let's just call it that, is that to grow on that is quite tricky. A restaurant is is a very personal thing. Lots of relationships are formed, and we've realized that to roll out the restaurants is you lose. I mean, we've seen it. We're surrounded by people that are rolling out restaurants faster than they can build them, and we don't feel that that's sustainable if we want to stay at a certain level when it comes to experience and service. So this is the next logical step, and something that we're quite excited about, that we can get a grip on and roll out. Yeah.
And by no means am I an expert in garage forecourts, but one of the things you're seeing internationally, especially in countries where electric vehicles are becoming more and more prolific, is the amount of time people spend at a garage is increasing. Charging an electric vehicle doesn't take 2 minutes, and as a result, people want to go to the forecourts where they can have a better and more differentiated experience. So looking into the future, I think the future is exceptionally bright for Pantry. And even with COVID, people are doing more of their monthly shops at convenience stores. So, I mean, I'm very excited to see where Pantry goes, and the further curation, because I'm buying a lot of lunch at Pantry.
I think just to add on to that, I think what we've realized, and I think this is the great thing about. We were battling with the idea of not opening the petrol station or the petrol side and the Pantry together. Thank goodness that turned out that way, because we've realized also that the Pantry can stand by itself, possibly with the EV charging points and so forth as an added, but we really do feel that it's something that can stand alone.
Absolutely. It's as a convenience store concept, I think it could definitely just stand on its own. You'd have me as a customer at least.
It's the corner cafe reinvented.
Exactly. It's funny how the world works. We're almost going back to the corner stores where supermarkets were prolific, and you thought they could never be beaten. But there's almost a sense of nostalgia that's coming back, and people like the idea of that. The idea of supporting local, smaller stores has really taken off once again.
And it's community based as well. So people like, oh, my local pantry or my local grocer. You know what I mean? It becomes more mine. It belongs to the people around there, and that's what people love.
No, absolutely. And a small thing I had a laugh about when I first came across the idea of Pantry. I was like, wow, these the Marble Group restaurateurs are going to take on a South African staple, which is the midnight garage pie. But I'm glad to see you guys have that in the selection, because I think it's illegal to buy anything other than a garage pie if you're buying from a convenience store between 1 and 3 a.m. I'm not sure if Cyril maybe changed that during lockdown, but I'm pretty sure that was a rule.
Yeah, we're also not sure what Cyril did in lockdown. But we can also say that it's interesting that you mentioned the pie, because we tried like a local pie, and we tried to sort of almost not revolutionize the garage pie, but we wanted to make it a little bit more artisanal. No, my friend, there's certain things you must not mess with.
It's a garage pie.
We're back at the sparrow pies.
When I went in, I was like, okay, cool. I want to see what type of pie is going to be there. I was expecting something, as you mentioned, David, revolutionary, and I was like, no, this is the staple pie that I'm used to. I remember looking at my fiance and being like, this is not what I expected, and she was like, you can't change a winning formula. I'm like, okay, fair play. Before I get onto your partnership and how you guys view business and a bit of your learnings through your journey, what are some of your favorite products out of Pantry that you would, if someone was going to Pantry for the first time, where would you direct them in terms of what you would personally choose?
I think that's the incredible thing. We've got these incredible nodes or pockets, from flowers that you've never seen. I mean, if you go into any store, you can name whatever store, it's always the same. It's the same arrangements, the same flowers,
same daisies,
same sunflowers. I love a sunflower, but it's the same. So, like that for me is probably one of the more unique things. The meat offering is a serious offering. Our meat offering is a serious offering, and it's all the meat that we use in our restaurant. So we trust the supplier, and this is a big thing that when it comes to when you're taking something like meat home, you need to trust your butcher. I think that's something that comes a long way. Trust your butcher. It's actually a saying. And so our meat offering is really good, and we believe in it, and we trust our supply chain. So for me, those are the like flowers and the meat is like a big thing, and then obviously the pastry. Just we have the most incredible team putting together some beautiful stuff, and we literally can't keep up with it.
I love the ice cream.
Soft serve, yeah.
I've had both. The ice cream is unbelievable. Your donuts are incredible. I've gone into 2022 trying to lose weight. You guys are not doing me any favors.
I'm trying to lose weight as well, but since the pantry.
Gary, at least you have an excuse, which is I need to test the product I'm going to sell.
Yes.
I have no excuse other than I have zero self-control. I'd love to get into a bit of your partnership and your background. I think a great place to start would be, how did you guys get to working together? What's the backstory behind the two of you and the formation of the Marble Group?
I think David can start on that one. We started.
Yeah, I think it's quite an incredible story. Gary has done many things in his life, but one of his things was the Century 21 properties. And probably 7-8 years ago, I bought a house literally 800 meters from Marble, and before Marble existed, before the thought of Marble. And the agent that sold it to me said to me, "Listen, our director has been wanting. We know that he's been wanting to open a restaurant, and would you be open to chatting to?" I worked at the Saxon at the time, and Gary gave me a call. He said, "Can I come through?" And and I always tell the story because I think it's very relevant, and it goes back to your question about how much thought goes into something and how much things. So again, maybe Gary doesn't always allude to everything, but he opened his laptop and he presented me with Marble, the name, the concept, the grill, the fire, literally everything. And as someone in the industry, you get presented with not a hell of a lot. People want to open restaurants. They don't come to you with ideas. They come to you with money, and then you sit with a baby when there's no more money or when things aren't going too well or whatever, and they leave it up to you. But it was very clear from the get-go that Gary knew exactly what he wanted. My only thing was, I said to him, I'll do this, but you got to be in this with me so that you understand what this thing is about, because I've seen so many of chefs, people that I've worked for, go into partnerships with people with a lot of money, and then when the going gets tough, they just pull the plug on everything. And so there was a very good understanding of where Gary wanted to go, what Gary wanted, and half an hour later, literally half an hour from talking to each other, we agreed on Marble, and it was that simple. And I think it's just an understand when two people get together, like with anything, with any form of relationship, it's either something that can work or something that can't work. And I think you've got to identify it and the gut feel again.
And I think Marble was born, and I mean it's been changing the restaurant landscape in Johannesburg ever since. David, I love that story because again, it just goes to show if you can find an alignment in vision and a way of thinking, great things can happen from it. Yeah. You guys have sustained that for many years since. And a business relationship, much like a romantic relationship, takes a lot of work. Do you guys have defined roles? How do you guys manage your interactions? And there's a clear passion between the two of you and enjoyment of working together. How have you guys managed to sustain that for so long?
I think we both got our roles in the business, and I mean, there's an understanding between myself and David on what we do. We have board meetings at the pass. and we chat about things, what the future is, what we're going to do next. But there's an understanding and a trust between us that we'll, in our fields, we'll do our best, and we trust each other that we're going to do that. So we do overlap in a lot of things, but we each got like defined roles as well, that our strengths as well. I mean, I wouldn't know what to do in a kitchen. I'm honest. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't know how to put it together. You know what I mean? Look, if I tried, I would. But I mean, I trust David to formulate it and do that. And then I'll do other things in the business. I love walking the floor at night. Just saying hello to customers. I really don't do much else but walk the floor. Which I love.
Yeah, I think there's always two very different sides to a business, and I think it's like when two chefs open a restaurant. I mean, there's fucking no worse idea than that ever happening. You know what I mean? Like, so firstly, you're dealing with all sorts of egos and all sorts of other things. Now you must open a business together. So it was very clear that with Gary's history and whatever Gary's done, that I don't have to worry about the running of the business. I'm a little bit more cautious, where Gary is a bit more entrepreneurial, and I think it needs that. We need to really, but it's always very respectful. Like I get passionate and I get heated, but like it's a bit of a chefy thing comes through. But at the end of the day, the better always comes through. And again, it's about a trust thing. We also have to back each other. Like the restaurant industry is a very funny industry. People have a lot to say. People are very jealous about what you do, and then so we have to back each other 100%. And that we don't have any issue. And we have an incredible partner, Dino, from an operational point of view, and just young and fiery. I think we're getting a bit old now. And most of all, we have the most incredible team. We offer an experience that starts with beautiful people on our floors. Wherever you go, you'll know the names of, whether it be Ronnie, Vickers, Lebo, the chefs in the kitchen. We have an incredible team. So it takes a lot of pressure off us, definitely, without a doubt.
And where do you guys get the continued inspiration or energy from to keep reinventing and trying new things? For people who are at the top of their game, it's easy to say, well, as you mentioned, maybe let the younger and more fiery ones take over from now. But you guys keep doing new things. I mean, Zoo hasn't been around for that long either. So again, you can see over the last few years, you've added more stuff to the Marble Group. Where's the inspiration coming from?
I think COVID was a big factor in us rethinking the way forward. We realized that anything can happen, and we just had quite a few months to realign and reinvent, or like the experiential side of things. And through COVID, we opened Zoo and we opened the Pantry. I mean, the Pantry and Zoo was born, and the ideas were born through COVID. That we could have stood back and rolled with the punches, but we took another stance. It says, let's see what opportunities come up through COVID, and Zoo was one of them, and Pantry was another.
I find that massively inspirational on a personal level. So the podcast was born out of, by training, I'm a CA, and then I've gone into strategy consulting. And I've always had ideas, but I've never been able to action them because I'm always worried. The fear of failure is something and feeling like an imposter is something that resonates within me quite a bit. And so hearing these stories and how you guys have managed to try new things, in COVID, which is really unprecedented times, is amazing to hear. I'd love to get from you guys, maybe it's your biggest learnings that you've had across your journey that you could share with people like me who'd love to start things. What would your advice be to people to just go out there and try something and build something from scratch?
Look, my feeling is, I'll never forget my very first business that I opened, because I wasn't as young as Gary, but I was 29 and I opened a cookery school, and I I signed a lease for a property, and I did a whole lot of stuff, and I didn't have any funding, and then the bank funding fell through. So but inexperience, I guess, but also but I did believe that it would work, and I think that's probably the most important thing. If you believe enough in something, it's like Gary said, you might not know how a kitchen works, but fuck me, I will learn. I don't know anything about running a business, but I had to learn. Like literally, I was man alone. I was teaching kids. I had to make notes. I mean, I didn't even know how I got around that first 2 years of that. But if you want something bad enough, for me, it is. I will make it work no matter what. And marble was probably for me, one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life.
And for me,
yeah, and it was a massive investment. The pressure was immense. The bookings. I mean, I don't want to tell you, we had 3,000 bookings before we even opened, and I'm not talking about 3,000 people. I'm talking about 3,000 tables.
Bookings, yeah.
So when this thing didn't come together in the first 3 days, we sat down. Gary called me. He said, "Listen, how do we make this thing work? What do we need?" And we rethought the kitchens, we rethought the product, the equipment, everything, and
things off the
menu.
menu.
And we literally started again, But we knew we had a winning formula. If there was nobody in the restaurant, if there was 5 tables in the restaurant, it would have been a different conversation, a very different conversation. But the people were here, and we believed that the product was right, and the product was right. So,
and you don't give up. I mean, we were. I don't know what I thought putting marble concept and cooking on open flames. That was an idea, but we learned how to do it. I mean, the guys in the kitchen had burn marks, and it was a learning curve. And you never give up. I mean, we could have failed because it was really hard.
Yeah.
When we opened marble, it was like everything was going wrong. I mean, we were challenged to the max, and I think that
before we were even open, we were challenged.
So with delays, and but you just stick it out and you make it work no matter what. And you get those days where you're like, "What have I done? What have I done?" Like you're like, "Shit, we did all this, and we can't get the product out." Was it too ambitious to open a 230-seater restaurant? That's the service is that high. Open kitchens, people are reviewing you all the time. You know what I mean? We're like the waiting, like, what is this marble? We really punted it out there, and then we just, and it took 3 months, 6 months.
6 months.
6 months.
Sure.
To settle the ship, and that was long. I mean, like,
that was 6 months after opening, eh?
Yeah, just settle and get the product right. We were like, we had to mature the meats properly, and we didn't expect the volumes, and just the staff had to learn in the kitchen how to cook on flames. You know what I mean? And it's like it was 6 solid months of just reinventing a restaurant. And
I think that again, it just goes back to, if you believe in the product, and you stick to your guns, it will work. It has to work if there's enough love and passion for the thing. But you need to have a bit of, I'm not saying that it's going to work for everybody, but you need to have a little bit of an understanding of the industry. You can't go blind into an industry that you've never done before. There needs to be a little bit of an understanding. But to give you just a very simple example of how marble grew, we started marble with 1 or 2 hostesses on the front desk, and we now have 13 or 15, I think, just manning the telephones, getting people to tables, like
it's a huge team.
That's just but that's the start of the experience, so it has to be right. So yeah, it's a hell of a learning curve. They're my biggest learning curve by a long shot, for sure.
You see, we came into an industry that was there, and no one had done anything in restaurants for a long time in South Africa. It was your standard franchises, restaurants, small format, and just everyone just copy pasted everything. And we came along and said, listen, we want a front desk, we want, the bar, we wanted open flames, we wanted everything. So we said, okay, well, let's try it. And we disrupted the restaurant industry in South Africa. It made people think, and even our competitors are doing things better. And they are rethinking how they're going to open and how they're going to serve the customers. And I think the Pantry is a convenience store, but we just rethought it on how to serve a customer and what a customer wants. People want that experience when they're going to any place, and that's what we've learned from the restaurants, and we've taken it to Pantry as well.
And I was going to say that is the one thing that is also exceptionally clear when you walk into Pantry. The level of service is, nothing like you'll experience at any other garage anywhere in the country. There's, I think, and maybe as customers, we've got used to convenience being synonymous with poor service. It's like if you want it quick, you can either have it quick or you can have it, with good service, but you can't have both. And that's something that you guys have done exceptionally well. And when I walked into the store, it felt like, okay, I can see how the service and the front of house that you get when you walk into a Marble or Saint or a Zoo has been translated into Pantry also. And people will travel for that. I mean, I live in Craighall Park. There are lots of garages around me, but I will drive the extra 2 kilometers to Pantry because I want that service and I want the product. So it's amazing to see, and I love the blending of the two. I think you're going to add a lot more competition in the space, and as a consumer, I can only be thankful for that because it means the service I'm going to get across the board is going to improve. I'd love to know, in your journey as the Marble Group, what for you guys, if you had to think back, what is your biggest what is the thing you look back at the most fondly, your biggest highlight over the years?
For me, without the doubt, Marble, going from this experience that, they always say, like, when it's really hard, you appreciate it the most. Like Marble for me will always be almost the flagship of how we think about all of our businesses and how we approach all of our. We always refer back to how difficult Marble was, and after 6 months to eventually get Marble to a place where I could sleep at night, and I don't even joke.
I can imagine.
Probably one of my most rewarding events of my life. There's no doubt. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, and so for me, I will always look back, and Marble will always be that for me, And as I said, all our businesses is always you relate back to Marble and say, okay, remember that, and then
you move forward.
Yeah.
And for me as well, I think Marble as well. I mean, it was a baby that cried for 6 months. You know what I mean? So it had colic, and you stress and you just fight through that trauma of opening a business. And I think that's what's rewarding, because once the product is there, and what we wanted to achieve with Marble, and after 6 months when everything calmed down and customers were starting to understand what Marble was about, I think it's very rewarding.
I also think one of the beautiful things is that we almost have a blueprint for our business. So if you look at all our businesses, even the Pantry, they're very experiential, and there's a bar aspect, definitely. There's a restaurant aspect. There's always an entertainment aspect. It's always an experience. So we try and pull that through. Now, the very important thing is not to copy that in the different spaces. And we've pulled that off quite nicely. Is that people can go to Saint and have one experience, and a very specific experience, but then come to Marble for something different, or Zoo for something different, or go down to the Pantry. And the music's being curated at the Pantry as well. Not just. It's not just the playlist. It's something that we thought about, and it's like, what would be nice there. So that blueprint that we've put together over the years, and again, starting with marble, is something that we've carried through, and then we keep refining.
David, just jumping onto that. So the experience, I love how it translates across. So one of the first things my fiance noticed when we walked into Pantry was, I think on one of the columns, there was a projector that had the image Pantry. And we looked at each other and we said, Saint. Right? And the experience when you go into Saint for the first time, like you almost wish you could go to Saint for the first time every time, because when you look up at the ceiling and you're like, oh my God, what is happening here? It's that curation of an experience and thinking beyond just the food. Like a normal fancy restaurant would look at the plating of the food and how you visually eat your food. You guys have taken it 300 steps further. I mean, to have that at Pantry, which is a garage forecourt, at its simplest, it is a convenience store for a garage. And to have that level, we really appreciated it.
I think just on that, I think the important thing is when people walk into any of those stores, they know it's us.
Yes.
And that's very important. And it's probably the thing that gets mentioned the most is our service, the people that work for us. And also when you walk into a space, you know that it's the Marble Group or the Marble Hospitality. That's a given.
Yeah. I mean, you'll see the same DNA that runs through. Yeah. They're all different, but it's got the same, experiential aspect, and that's where we see. I mean, if we could charge R1 for every photo taken at the Pantry, we'd actually make more money. Yeah. I mean, people walk around taking photos of ice cream, of the coffee, of the pastries. It's just you can see the excitement in the customers. They're like, and that's what you want to see.
You're spot on. The first time I walked in, everyone was on their phone and like they were taking pictures, and I was like, "Jeepers, am I missing something?" I was looking for like a proper camera to see if it was a shoot that I'd walked into. But it's that level of excitement that you've brought about, and I'm sure you guys must be very proud of that, because at the end of the day, again, if you strip it down to its bare bones, you have managed to get South African consumers excited about a garage forecourt. That is incredible. It really is.
I mean, that's what we wanted to do and achieve when we sat down and planned. And we placed everything, the coffee counter, and even the product. I mean, how do we get people excited? Walking into the shop. You know what I mean? And we even put the soft serve machine in there because it's nostalgic. I mean, we all, the soft serve is something that we all grew up with. The truck that used to come down the road, play the same tune over and over.
Has there been? Sorry, go for it, David.
I think also just we must all also understand the role of social media and everything. Just as something as simple as Instagram. And I say it's simple, but just man, it's been from before Marble opened. Social media for us was a massive marketing tool. And yes, it's all about the pretty pictures and everything else, but it's also what happens, sort of the drive behind it, And when I say social media, Google is sort of included in that digital marketing space, where again Gary gets very involved and he loves analyzing and that kind of thing. It's always about the numbers and being in the right place. And when you click on something that we come up, it's been a massive part, something that we haven't spoken about. It's been a massive part of our success is the way we approach our digital marketing. And I guess, I don't know, is Instagram digital marketing? Does it fall under that category?
Yeah, it would.
Yeah. So
and maybe could we talk about that a bit more? Because I think the other thing for people who are small, trying to start something new, I think a lot of people encounter this difficulty where they actually have an excellent idea and they don't realize how difficult it is actually to reach a wider audience and the effort required. It's not, sometimes a more lackluster product can do better because they have a wider reach than an excellent product that is being marketed to two people. You guys are in that sweet spot where you have an excellent product and you have an excellent marketing. how have you guys managed to achieve it? So Gary, as David has alluded to, you're deep into the numbers. What is the secret to that success? And I mean, obviously, don't give us the secret formula, but any advice?
I mean, Instagram, Facebook. I mean, that's all brand awareness. You know what I mean? There's like you reach people and there's an awareness of your brand, and you interact with your customers. What's happening, what we're doing, what's new on the menu, and they just make it, but have like those reels, make it but fun for everyone. And then you get the other side of digital marketing, which is your paid, like Google AdWords that you click, and when someone's looking for best restaurant in Johannesburg, Marble should come up in the search results. And that's paid. You have to be very careful, and it takes time to build, your platform. You'll start off with 100 followers, and then you build on that, and you create that hype. And it's a slow process. I mean, like Marble's got 52,000 active followers. I mean, we can see like they really engage with us. And I mean, we started off with 1,000, and it grew over 5 years to 52,000. Followers that engage with one restaurant. And we've got Saint as well, and we've got Zoo, and we've got Pantry as well. I mean, Pantry's already got 25,000 followers on Instagram.
It's insane. Yeah.
People love the Donut Wednesdays, and we're always creating something in that space to get the customer excited. You can't just post things. It's just like it has to be fun and engaging just to get your customer's attention.
And I love the point you make. It is a labor of love. It's another business angle, and it needs as much curation as other aspects of your business. And I think people forget that. And the other thing that I really, I guess it shows the level of love and care you guys have for that is, David, you're a celebrity. It would be very easy to almost fully try and utilize your platform only to market the businesses. But the fact that across the board you have thousands upon thousands of followers for your different restaurants shows just how much time and effort goes into that space. And I think that's exceptionally commendable. One last question for sorry, David, go for it. Yeah.
The social media is, and I think it comes across with with everything that we do. And I think for an upstart, for somebody that wants to get going with this kind of thing, authenticity is very important.
Yes.
Don't bullshit people. Like don't try and be something that you're not. Don't because people pick that up straight away, especially in this day and age. So there's lots of platforms you can buy followers, you can do all sorts of things. But people see through all of that. Yeah. You can see immediately when something has been posted by somebody else, or it becomes very generic. Be yourself. If you believe in your product, be yourself. I've learned that over, especially during lockdown. People enjoy me for the person that I am, not for the person that I pretend to be, or that I'm not, or whatever. So,
yeah, and I agree with David. The authenticity is a huge thing for us. I mean, people, you need to be genuine to your customers, and they feed off you. And if you give them a nice energy, it works. When people walk into Marble, they feel that they're part of Marble. It's theirs.
Absolutely, and that authenticity that you both mentioned, I think, is so key. We've seen, especially with social media influencers, it's less about, don't try and push a product. Show your content, show who you are. I mean, David, on your Instagram, I enjoy it as much for the food as seeing your bulldog. Right? It's just showing different aspects of your life. The last question is a personal one, and I ask all my guests this, so it's for both of you. Maybe let's start with you, Gary. If you were somehow to stand in front of your 6-year-old self, what about your journey up until this point would you tell them to look forward to the most? And it doesn't have to be related to Marble; it could be in any personal context.
I think whatever you do, I've always said that to myself, even when I was 6 years old, is just have fun doing it. You know what I mean? If it's not fun and you're not enjoying yourself, and if the end goal is just money, or that's a difficult equation. You have to have fun and you have to enjoy what you do. You have to walk into work every day like feeling excited, and you'll succeed. I mean, by doing that, you'll achieve 10 times more than just going to work and say, well, I'm here for the money, or I don't really like what I do, or this startup that I'm going to do, it's a good idea, I'll make millions. And if you start thinking like that, then you're not immersed into your product. The failure will be much higher if you're not enjoying what you do and having fun doing it. And
I think that's a great answer and very sage advice. I think having fun with what you do is there's literally no amount of money you can put on that.
I mean, I walk into Marble every day and I get excited. I walk into the Pantry and I get excited. I walk into Zoo and I get excited. You know what I mean? Like, how do we change things? How do we, get the product better? You know what I mean? I'm always thinking how to improve what we're doing. And it's Marble 6 years in, and I still get goosies walking in at night and seeing the restaurant full. You know what I mean?
That's incredible. That truly is incredible. David, on your side, looking at your 6-year-old self, what would you tell them about your journey to look forward to the most?
Look, I think the important thing for me, I think, has always been, and I haven't really realized this until recent, is I've never been, and it's just, I guess it just is who I am. I've never really been a goal-orientated person. Like, the dream was never I need to open my own restaurant. And maybe you thought like that, but that's because everybody else is saying that. But if you're too focused on one thing, you miss a hell of a lot. And I think because I haven't done that, because I've worked incredibly hard, and that's all I've done, is I've worked incredibly hard and I've thrown everything at it, to the detriment of a lot of things, maybe in my personal life, but I've thrown everything at it. A lot of people see this. So there's lots more opportunities from a varied background, or from varied places, not just restaurant spaces or with it, whatever. So I think sometimes when you too focused and too goal orientated, you miss out on a lot. I think when you work hard, and I'm just talking about a younger sort of generation, work really hard, put what you need to put into it, and a lot of opportunities will come your way. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be sitting here today. That I can tell you now. I could have come to Joburg and said, "No, I want to open my own restaurant," and I would have come here, and I can tell you now, I would have failed. But what did I do? I came. I worked in a hotel. Everybody criticized me. I just become chef of the year, restaurant of the year, and then I left, and I came to the Radisson Hotel. People thought I was off my fucking head, but I learned. I understood what Joburg was about. I would have never have met Gary. And I can tell you now, I would have just opened another average fucking restaurant, and there I would have still been sitting today. So, if I was lucky. So, no, that's sort of my, if I can give any advice, that would be it.
Yeah.
That's very helpful.
And nothing's easy, like I've opened so many businesses in my life, and not one of them was I say, wow, it's like just, the dream of opening something and it just sails and just works. It's hard work, deadlines, staffing. You've got this concept in your head that's how it's supposed to start run, like Marble. And when you open it, it's completely different. And you just have to adapt and change and move, and that's what makes it rewarding as well.
And that's what I've started hearing quite consistently, is there is such joy in starting something yourself and building it up, and there's no amount of effort you can put in that feels too much, especially when you have this passion and this desire for it, and you're onto a winning concept. You can feel it. So yeah, just thank you so much, David, Gary, for your time. Thank you for your wisdom. I'm sure I speak for the majority of people in the country when I say we're so excited to see what comes next from the Marble Group. We continue to be delighted and filled by all your great concepts.